The late-night shift at the diner was always slow. The only sound was the buzzing of the flickering neon sign outside. I was wiping down the counter, tired but glad the night was almost over. Then the bell above the door jingled. I looked up expecting a weary traveler or a local wanting coffee. Instead, a sharply dressed man walked in. He had this commanding presence. His suit probably cost more than my rent for a year. He moved confidently like he owned the place. He sat in a booth by the window, his intense gaze fixed on the street. When I went to take his order, he didn't even look at the menu. Black coffee. He said, his voice low and firm. I nodded and wrote it down. When I brought his coffee, he barely acknowledged me. I'm used to customers ignoring me, so I didn't take it personally. But then when he reached for his wallet to pay, a photograph fell out. It landed it face up and my heart stopped. I knew that face, the warm smile, the kind eyes. It was my mother. For a moment, I just stared, my heart pounding. Then before I could think, I picked it up and asked, my voice barely a whisper, "Where did you get this?" The man looked up, his cool blue eyes finally focusing on me. I turned the photo toward him, clutching it tightly. "Why do you have a picture of my mother?" His expression flickered for a second. Then his face became unreadable. He reached for the photograph, his fingers brushing mine as he took it. "You must be mistaken," he said, putting it back in his wallet like it was nothing. My stomach twisted. I knew what I'd seen. Mom had an almost identical photo in her memory box at home. I knew every crease, every detail. "This wasn't a mistake. I'm not mistaken," I said firmly. "Why do you have it?" The man sighed and adjusted his expensive suit. "I don't owe you an explanation," he said. Then before I could react, he stood up, put a 100 bill on the counter, and headed for the door. Panic rushed through me. He was leaving, and this might be my only chance to learn the truth. I hurried from behind the counter, almost knocking over a tray. "Wait!" I yelled, but he didn't stop. He was already going toward a sleek black car parked at the curb, the driver getting out to open the door. My heart pounded. "Please just tell me how you knew her," I pleaded. He paused for a moment, his hand on the car door. I thought he might actually say something. Instead, he turned just enough to look at me, his gaze cool and detached. Then he said without any emotion, "Forget this." He got into the car, the door shut, the engine roared, and the car sped off into the night. I stood there frozen, my breath coming in uneven gasps. A billionaire had just walked into my life and left me with so many questions. Who was he? Why did he have a picture of my mother? I wasn't going to let this go. I was going to find out the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, searching for any clue about the man from the diner. I didn't know his name, no business card, no receipt, just his face, his voice, and the dismissive way he'd looked at me. But that photograph changed everything. I started searching for wealthy business tycoons, real estate moguls, and CEOs. Dozens of names popped up, but none matched his face. Just when I was about to give up, I saw him, Richard Lawson, CEO of Lawson Global Enterprises, a billionaire real estate magnate. His empire spanned cities. I clicked on his image, my breath catching. It was him. I scrolled through articles, but there was nothing linking him to my mother. No past relationships, no family ties. Nothing. It meant only one thing: he had erased her. He had walked into that diner, holding a picture of my mother, and acted like she didn't exist, like Evelyn. Carter meant nothing. The thought made my blood boil. I wasn't letting this go. I needed answers. The next morning, I took the first bus downtown. My heart pounded as I stood in front of the massive glass skyscraper of Lawson Global Enterprises. The building loomed over me, a symbol of wealth and power. But I wasn't intimidated. I walked inside, straight to the reception desk. "I need to see Richard Lawson," I said, my eyes steady. The receptionist barely looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I admitted, "but it's important." The woman sighed, unimpressed. "Mr. Lawson doesn't take walk-in meetings." I expected this. I had no appointment, no official reason to be there. If I wanted answers, I'd have to find another way in. I scanned the lobby. Security guards near the elevators, employees with badges. There was no way I was getting in the normal way. Then I saw a young man in his mid-20s with a coffee and folder heading toward the elevators. He looked distracted. I moved quickly, falling into step beside him. "Hey," I whispered urgently, "wait up. You forgot to send me that report Mr. Lawson needed." The man blinked, startled. "What?" I sighed, faking exasperation. "The report he was expecting this morning." Before he could respond, I smoothly stepped forward, walking right through the turnstile as his badge activated the sensor. The guard barely glanced at me. I was in, my pulse pounded as I entered the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. This was it. I was about to face Richard Lawson, and this time, he wasn't walking away. The elevator doors opened to the top floor of Lawson. Global Enterprises, I stepped out. My breath, shallow hands clenched at my sides. The reception area was sleek and modern. A man in a dark suit approached me. Miss, do you have an appointment? No, I said, but I need to see Richard Lawson. It's about my mother. The man's jaw tightened. Mr. Lawson doesn't take walk-ins. I exhaled, my heart pounding. Tell him my mother's name was Evelyn Carter, and I'm not leaving until I speak to him. The man hesitated before disappearing down a hallway. The minutes stretched on. Then finally a door opened and Richard Lawson stepped out. The moment he saw me, something flickered in his gaze. Not surprise, not anger, but something like resignation. He walked toward me slow and deliberate. Then, after a long pause, he simply said, "Come with me." I followed him into his office, my heart racing. The moment the door closed, I turned to face him. "Why do you have a picture of my mother?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his desk, pulled out his wallet, and placed the photograph on the table. I stared at it, then slowly looked up at him. "You knew her?" I whispered. Richard met my eyes, his expression unreadable. "I didn't just know her," he finally said. "I loved her." My world tilted. I had come for answers, but I wasn't prepared for this. Richard leaned against his desk, sighing deeply. "I loved her," he repeated, his voice full of regret. But I walked away. My chest tightened. Why? His jaw clenched. Because I was a coward. My family made it clear if I stayed with Evelyn, I'd lose everything. The inheritance, the business, my place in their world. My stomach churned. "So you left her for money?" Richard's gaze darkened. I thought I could come back for her later when I had secured my future. But by the time I did, she was gone. My hands curled into fists. My mother had suffered while this man lived in luxury. "She never told me about you," I whispered. "Not once." Pain flickered in Richard's eyes. "Because she wanted to protect you from me." My breath came in shallow gasps as I tried to take in his words. I straightened up, staring at him. "So you left her for money?" His gaze darkened. "I thought I could come back for her later when I had secured my future, but by the time I did, she was gone." My hands curled into fists. My mother had suffered while this man had lived in luxury. "She never told me about you," I whispered. "Not once." Pain flickered in Richard's eyes. "Because she wanted to protect you and from me?" The weight of his confession hung heavy in the room. I needed space to think, to process. Without another word, I turned and left his office. That night, I searched through my mother's belongings, hoping for answers she'd never given me. As I sifted through old letters and keepsakes, my fingers brushed against something small, a velvet pouch at the bottom of a wooden box. I pulled it out, my breath catching, and carefully opened it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with an engraved pendant. The words "Forgive, Love, Begin" were etched into the metal, and on the back was a small faded photograph, one of my father. A note was with it in my mother's handwriting. "This belonged to your father. I kept it for you. One day, you will understand." My hands trembled as the truth hit me. Richard Lawson wasn't just a man from my mother's past. He was my father. The next morning, I stood outside Lawson Global Enterprises again, clutching the pendant in my hand. The city buzzed around me, but my mind was focused on one thought. This man was my father. I took a deep breath and marched inside. This time, I wasn't sneaking in. I walked up to the receptionist's desk, my voice steady. "I need to see Richard Lawson. It's urgent." The woman barely glanced at me. "As I said before, Mr. Lawson doesn't take walk-ins." I slammed my hand on the counter, revealing the pendant. "Then tell him his daughter is here." The receptionist's polite expression faltered. She hesitated before finally reaching for the phone. Within moments, security guards surrounded me, but before they could escort me out, a deep voice cut through the air. "Let her in." Richard stood at the end of the hall, his face unreadable. He turned and walked toward his office without another word. I followed, my pulse hammering. The door shut behind us, enclosing us in silence. I wasted no time. I placed the pendant on his desk and crossed my arms. "Explain this." Richard stared at the necklace, his fingers hovering over it but never touching it. His jaw tightened, his composure slipping for the first time. "She kept it," he murmured almost to himself. She didn't just keep it, I shot back. She left it for me along with a note, and she never told me who my father was, but this, I gestured to the pendant, not, this told me everything. Richard sighed sharply, rubbing his temples. I didn't know, he admitted, if I had known she was pregnant, if I had known about you. He trailed off as if the words physically pained him. My chest ached, but I refused to let sympathy cloud my anger. But you didn't know because you left. I searched for her, Richard said, his voice raw. By the time I realized what I'd lost, she had disappeared. I hired investigators, no trace. She made sure I wouldn't find her. I swallowed the lump in my throat. That sounded exactly like my mother, protecting me at all costs. But was it really protection, or had it stolen something from me? She thought she was protecting me from you, I said slowly, testing the words. She didn't think you deserved to be in my life. Richard flinched. Maybe she was right. Silence hung between us. For the first time, I saw the cracks in his armor, the regret, the sorrow, the years of wondering what could have been. I can't change the past, Richard said, his voice quieter. But I can be here now. My fingers curled around the pendant. Forgive, love, begin. The words weighed heavily on me. I don't know if I can forgive you. I admitted, not yet. Richard nodded, his expression solemn. I understand. I took a shaky breath, my mind racing with questions, emotions, uncertainty. But one thing was clear. I wasn't walking away, not yet. For the first time, I was willing to hear him out. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt fragile. Finally, I reached for the necklace on the desk and clasped it around my neck. My mother had left this for a reason. Maybe it wasn't just about Richard. Maybe it was about me, giving me the choice she never had. Richard's eyes flickered to the pendant, his breath hitching slightly. She really never stopped thinking about me, did she? I swallowed hard. She never stopped protecting me. He nodded, understanding. I won't ask you to forgive me today or tomorrow, but if you ever want to know me, not as Richard Lawson, but just as a man who made a terrible mistake, I'll be here. I studied him, searching for deception or arrogance. I found none. Just regret, just a man haunted by a choice he couldn't take back. I stepped back, my fingers brushing the pendant once more. I don't know what comes next, I admitted. A small, almost sad smile crossed Richard's lips. Neither do I, but maybe that's okay. I nodded. Then, with one last glance, I turned and walked toward the door. Not running, not storming away, just leaving on my own terms. I wasn't ready to call him my father, but I wasn't closing the door either. Maybe some things weren't meant to be rewritten, but maybe, just maybe, they could be rewritten together. Every step felt heavy, as if I were carrying not just my own pain, but the weight of years lost. I hesitated for a moment, but I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because some wounds weren't meant to heal overnight. I walked away not to erase the past, but to decide if I was ready to rewrite the future. I wasn't ready to call him my father, but I wasn't closing the door either. Maybe some things weren't meant to be rewritten, but maybe, just maybe, they could be rewritten together. The following days passed by so slowly. Each hour, each minute was heavy with jumbled thoughts. Richard's face, the necklace, his confession. They all kept swirling in my mind. At times, I wanted to throw it all away to return to my normal life before. But then my mother's image would appear, that look in her eyes, both sad and resolute, and it wouldn't let me run away. I started to learn more about Richard Lawson, not through the glamorous articles about a tycoon, but by trying to find the real person he was. I read old interviews, the sparse information about his company's charitable activities, even comments from people who used to work with him. I wanted to know, beyond the facade of a successful man, what kind of person he was. One afternoon, I decided to visit my mother's grave. Sitting before the simple headstone, I poured out my heart. I told her about Richard, about the turmoil within me, about the fear, and also a flicker of hope. I don't know if she heard me, but I felt somewhat lighter afterward. And then I realized something. I couldn't stay at this crossroads forever. I needed to make a choice, not for Richard, but for myself. I have the right to know about my origins, to better understand the past that shaped who I am, and whatever the outcome, I will accept it. One morning I texted Richard, I want to meet with you.